tends to be more usable and a little bit more flexible in your design of fixtures. Who has used a wiki? Okay. Who has a project wiki? So on your development project, do you have a wiki dedicated to your project? Okay, that's good, about half of you. If you don't, you should consider using one. It's beneficial. It's great for collaboration. Lots of documentation up there. It's very useful. So for those of you who haven't used them, a wiki is a collaborative website. Any web page, you can press a button that says edit. And when you press that button, it brings up all the text in what's called wiki syntax or wiki text. And you can change it, press the save button, and your text automatically gets saved on the web page. This was created by Ward Cunningham. Again, great guy. And again, consider having a wiki for your project if you don't. So in Fitnesse, you're allowed to create tables with wiki syntax. And rather than just go through the slides, I'll show you. I'll talk very loudly. Okay, so I have a fitness server running here on my local machine, and I've written some tests already. You'll notice here this suite button. I've put all my tests together into a suite so I can run them at once. And when I press this, it executes all my tests, and I can see that my system is passing. We'll run it again. Oh, they're still passing. Good. There are 3 tests here. What this system is, it's a conference registration system. So you can attendees can register for the conference, and you can add sessions to the conference. And let's look at this one. Test creating a session. So we need to create a session in our conference. What I've done here is I've used an action fixture, and what we're going to do is enter the title. The title of the session will be Acceptance Testing with Fitness. We'll enter the speaker as Micah, and enter the description as all about fitness, and then we'll press the save button, so there's a save button out there. And then I'm going to use a row fixture to check all of the sessions in the conference, and there should be only one. The name of it, or the title, should be Acceptance Testing with Fitness. The speaker should be Micah. Now if I run this, the code executes, and it gives you an indicator of whether it passes or not. Green, of course, means passing. Notice that in this table, we did not make any assertions, so it doesn't get any coloring. But the row fixture here, we are making assertions. There should be a session called Acceptance Testing with Fitness, and the speaker should be Micah, so those turn green. We got those right. And even though we didn't check the description, it's just going to give me the description back. Now if we wanted to edit this, we press the edit button. And this is that same page in wiki text. The tables they use the pipe symbol, it's the vertical symbol, we call it pipe, to separate all the cells. And you can see that here. And here's another table. So if we wanted to make a change, for example, maybe we just change the title of our talk. Then we can test it again, and now you see that the test fails. We expected a session called Acceptance Testing with Fitness, but it's missing. So it tells me that session is missing, and I got an extra one. There's some surplus. There was a session titled Acceptance Testing with Fitness 2. So you can see how that works. So this is the wiki. You can go to any page and edit it. You can make it a test and execute it. So let's talk about making it a test. If I create a new page, let's go here. Let's say I wanted to create a new test. I'll go to this page and I'll just use some simple wiki syntax here. I use this caret to say that I'm nesting it. I'm making a nested structure of tests. And I'll just give it a silly name. It shows up here. Now, notice that all the other links are blue. This one is black because that page does not exist yet. But it gives me a nice little link here where I can go and create that page. So I'll edit that. And now we have a new page. If I go back to the Achilles, if I go back to the Achilles page, we now see our new page in a blue link. If I load up that page, you notice it has a test button automatically. Now Fitness will look at the name of your pages, and if it starts with the word test, it says, oh, you want a test page. So it automatically adds this button. However, you might not want it to be a test. So you can go to Properties here, and you can turn off the test feature. It looks a little funny because I've increased the font size, but here we go, we'll save the properties. And notice that the test button disappeared. So you can make any page in your wiki a test page. So that's probably the first step. You need to create pages and mark them as a test in order to make test pages. But once you've got more than one test, you're going to want to group them together so you don't have to run each test individually. We call these test suites. And there's a couple ways you can make test suites. The first way is, and probably the easiest way, is to create a nested structure of pages. Now, if you've been to Wikipedia or Wars Wiki, that wiki has a flat structure. And every page is on the same level. In Fitness, you can create a structure of pages. So pages within pages. And this is useful for making suites. So we have here the page Achilles 2008, and inside of that we have several other pages. If I click on one of these, you'll notice the URL changes. It's in Achilles 2008, test register attendees, and it also tells you right here that it's inside the Achilles page. By doing that, and also turning on the suite property here, the root level, our page here, Achilles, becomes a suite. When I press this button, it's going to search through every page inside that wiki page, and anything that's marked with a test, it's going to execute it. And we see that we broke one of our tests here. I'm going to fix that. Okay, and then we're all passing it. One more thing I want to show you is a do fixture. In most cases here I've used action fixtures and row fixtures. This last table here is a do fixture. And you'll notice that it reads a little bit nicer than the other ones. What I've done here is I've registered 2 users. This is a column fixture. So there's an attendee named Micah, another attendee named Joe, and they were both successfully registered. I've created a session called Acceptance Testing with Fitness, and then what I'm doing is I'm going to sign attendee Joe up for Acceptance Testing with Fitness. That reads rather nicely, at least in English it does. And then I'm going to check attendee Joe is signed up for 1 session. And notice that every other cell is turning green. So it's actually calling methods inside my do fixture and checking that user Joe is signed up for 1 session. And we'll check that attendee Joe is signed up for acceptance testing with Fitness, and that turns green as well. So do fixtures can make your test look a little bit nicer. Thank you. So that's Fit and Fitness. Again, all this came about probably about 6 years ago when Fit came out and when Fitness was added on it. And that's kind of a long time in our industry. Software changes very rapidly. And frankly, I'm a little bit ashamed that something newer hasn't come along since then. Again, we just wrote Fitness for our sessions, our classes at Object Mentor. We didn't intend it to be an industry-wide acceptance testing tool. However, lots of people do use it with success, but there are some new interesting things happening. If you start implementing acceptance testing, when you investigate fitness, you should also look at something called SLIM. SLIM is being built as an extension to fitness, although at some point it's probably going to be extracted out. It's an alternative to fit. You can still use fitness, but it's an alternative to fit. And what it does is it gives you much more flexibility in the way you write tests. You no longer have to use tables. You can use tables, and all the tables are still supported, but you can write your tests in a variety of syntaxes. In fact, you can make up any syntax or markup you'd like to implement your tests in. SLIM is a much smaller framework, so it's much easier to implement for all the various languages. And that might prove to be a better alternative to fit in the future. It's written by Uncle Bob. Who knows Uncle Bob? Again, you should know him, because he's a great man. He's also my dad.
So you can name him Uncle Bob?
We can name it Uncle Bob? I'll recommend it. The other thing you should look at is RSpec and Cucumber. This is the BDD, Behavior-Driven Development version of acceptance testing. BDD is the new fad, especially in the Ruby world. What it offers is a syntax which is pure text, no tables, you just write text. It's very readable. Your tests all have the same format. You have to say, given some situation, when the user does this, then you should see this, or this should happen. Every test is phrased in that same way, given, when, then. So it makes for very readable tests. It was written by Dan North, David Chalimsky had a lot to do with it, and Azlak Helisoy. I think I spelled his name wrong, but Azlak Helisoy is his name. Now you might be thinking, well, this is Ruby, and we're not programming in Ruby, so we can't use that. However, something interesting is happening in the Ruby community. Every other language is implementing a Ruby interpreter. So if you're working in Java, there is JRuby. JRuby allows you to write Ruby code, which can integrate very easily with your Java code. It's very seamless. So you could write your tests in Ruby and execute your Java code. And this could be very powerful because, to be honest, writing fixtures can get complicated. Java code, there's lots of syntax. Fixtures can get complicated. By using Ruby, you could be much more explicit in your tests, and you could save time writing your fixtures. So that could be very beneficial. If you're doing .NET, Iron Ruby is somewhere on its route to being 1.0 or 1.9. I don't think it's quite ready yet, but that's an option for writing Ruby code in .NET. And if you're programming in C or C++, no worries. Ruby is built on C and C++, so your problem is solved. So again, if you're looking into automated acceptance testing, you might also want to check out RSpec. RSpec has something called StoryRunner. StoryRunner is obsolete, or soon will be. It is being replaced by something called Cucumber, which will later be renamed to StoryRunner. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
You mentioned initially that these tests shouldn't be focusing or even not using or passing through the UI. But the UI needs to be tested as well. You can be making many mistakes there. So how you cover that fragility? How you are ensuring the users that the software will be okay even when you add the UI layer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's a compromise. My solution is to make your UI layer as thin as possible so that there's nothing to test. That's not always possible, and in projects that I've worked on, we also have tests that go through the user interface. For example, web apps. If you're doing web apps, then definitely check out Selenium or These are tools which drive your browser, and they will execute any JavaScript you have in your web pages and execute all of your UI code. So you can do that. The cost is that you can't drive development through Selenium tests, and they tend to be fragile because they're going through the user interface. So there's some balance there between tests which are in Fitness and avoid the user interface, and tests which go through the UI. Does that answer your question?
One of the tests you show us. I will be quick. The second test that you show us, I think it was mimicking a user interface. Was that actually going through a user interface when you enter something, you enter another thing, and then you press the save button, something like that? Was that going through a user interface, or just was a mimicking?
I think I made that up. But you can do that. You can write fixtures which drive Selenium, for example. And so as you're executing your fitness test, the browser will pop up and start going through all your pages. You can do that. Over here. In the first row here.
Pretty much at the beginning of the fitness explanation, actually the fit explanation, you said that this kind of test actually talk to an API instead of concentrating on the UI, right? But it is not quite clear to me how it integrates with an API. For example, I assume you showed some examples in Java, and what I can see is what it does. I mean, when you run the test, it instantiates a class, a test suite class, or what it does. Okay,
so I'm assuming that the core logic of your application is in some objects, some Java objects, and that the UI are smaller objects which use your business layer. So in part of the build, remember the build, operate, check? In part of the build step, you should construct your business level logic, construct those objects, and then the fixtures will just talk to those objects.
So does it work only with Java, or?
Good question. So Fit was originally written in Java. It has since been translated into any language you can think of, almost. So .NET, C, Ruby, Perl, Python, Smalltalk.
Sorry, about what you just said, that means that whoever writes the acceptance test needs to know the class's names.
Whoever writes the fixtures has to know the class's names.
And whoever writes the test needs to know the fixtures.
Yes.
And the fixtures were written?
Typically the fixtures come after the test. So the customer will write their...
No, not when, where.
Oh, where? Oh. In your source code, maybe in a separate package. I usually create a package called fixtures, and I put everything in there.
But it's syntax that it's not Java syntax or what is fitness syntax?
The fixtures?
Yes. What kind of syntax?
The fixtures are Java code.
It uses an interface that is defined.
Oh yes, all your fitness tests, all your wiki content in Fitness will get saved in your file system as plain files. If you put it in your project, you want to put it in source control. So every developer, when they update, they will be getting all of the wiki pages, all of the acceptance tests on their machine. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir.
Can you integrate this with cruise control, for example? Have you ever heard about cruise control?
Oh, yeah, of course. So cruise control is an automated build system. So every time you check in, cruise control will execute your code. And there are ant tasks